And I just want to repeat, just for the sake of the segment, the question that we got, the general question that we had got from Second Book of Laughter. Again, it says, how does DC make their money off animated films, especially with them being better than their live action films? Now, the argument that I make is that again, when you look at more modernized economic, or let's say kind of forms when it comes to animation, I think the Japanese have it very well. I think the Japanese have done it very well with their animes and the mangas, obviously. But their relationship is why it's such a great economic system. See, the problem with modernized or with the mainstream comics, not modernized anything, they're lagging, if anything. But with mainstream comic books is that the creators now with Marvel and DC, and I guess you can say this has kind of been the case for a while, but you really see how doing that for as long as they have done it became a critical error. Because they went to appeal, they're all about, selling merchandise and all of this sort of stuff. And they had the wrong idea with that. Because they thought that the continuity efforts, the canon efforts are meaningless for that. And I guess to a certain degree, that's correct. But long term, is that an effective strategy? I guess is the conversation that we need to be having. Main reason being is that, there are people that are going to buy maybe merchandise for these characters having not even understood anything about them. We talk about Supermans of the world, Batman, Spider-Mans of the world. They are basically a part of American culture, and they transcend the comic books. So most people that know who they are have never, ever, ever picked up a book, though they know them. And so I get that. So there's some truth to, okay, the canon and the continuity doesn't matter when it comes to those particular sales. However, long-term wise, and I think what we're seeing right now, definitely as the age has become more digitized, you're seeing a lack of, you talk about American animation, though even the DCs of the world have done some decent comic book adaptations for the animation, certainly better than the live action. There's no enthusiasm surrounding it. And I think that's the question here that we got to try to answer. Why is there no enthusiasm around that, despite it being so much better? And what the definitely modern era, be it the business folk or the writers or anything like that, definitely once it crossed into mainstream and went Hollywood, like completely Hollywood, everything, unfortunately, when it comes to these characters that and love, is supposed to be treated by their own standards, and certainly by the crackheads that they try to appeal to. It doesn't matter. As in, okay, here's the character named Batman. If you see Batman in a live action setting, if you see Batman in an animated setting, if you see Batman in a comic book, you're supposed to treat, even if there's multiple ones in the same medium, so like multiple comic books, you have to treat them, or they're expecting you to treat them as if they're in a different universe. That's why I hate different universes, alternative universe. What it is it's basically them, the normies who don't read this stuff that just want to consume. They like that, and obviously they don't have to, the mainstream, let's say with the big two, they don't have to work for anything. They can just try to sell based on name recognition. But this is why you see maybe higher sales in other aspects, revenue in other aspects, but in other as well, on the flip side, they're lagging. Now, going back to the relationship between the Japanese with the anime and the manga, the thing that makes those unique and why they're so good is that they sell each other, if that makes sense. So how these characters look, how they act, there's a general understanding of what that's supposed to be, but largely because there's an adaptation. Yeah, sometimes there's filler, as I mentioned, and sometimes there's going to be some slight alterations. But for the most part, you're not going to be, if you read the manga and then you see the anime, you're like, okay, I know exactly what I'm looking at, right? And instead, unfortunately, for the other side, when it comes to like the American comic books, canon and continuity don't matter to them, and they've taken it for granted. That's what's happened. They've taken it for granted. They thought it didn't matter, and it does to a lot of people. Like, why wouldn't the customer want to have some sort of familiarity? Because what happens is when you do, if you're orchestrating your, I guess, whether you call it a business model or plan or whatever it is, you'd want one to sell the other anyway. But the thing is, it's got to be sold based on familiarity. And you lose nothing from a merchandise standpoint by doing that. The problem is that a lot of these guys are creatively bankrupt. So having the looser depictions and those that freedom, creative freedom, which is what they like to say that it is, makes it easier for them to tell goofy stories. So everybody's treated like it's separate, though it's the same goddamn character. So I think that's why you see maybe on the less enthusiasm about like the live action as well as like the animation, because none of those are selling each other. They all have to be treated different. So it's like, what version of this character am I going to get? Is he going to honor who we understand, like as far as what the legacy of the character is? Probably not. Definitely nowadays, these guys are so consumed by the social political views. There's no way that they're going to give you an accurate depiction of really anything. It'll be tokenization, swaps, all of that sort of stuff, when they easily could sell each other. Like, you could tell a comic book, adapt the comic book in the movie, making it make sense for a live action era. You lose absolutely nothing. You lose nothing from doing that, other than obviously the people that, let's say, read like a book, something more detailed, they're going to have more knowledge on what's supposed to happen. But that's not a negative thing. As far as I'm concerned, that gets the book reader enthusiastic about the animated film, the animated show, the TV, the like movie, live action. Because they know that what they're going to get is it's connected. Right now, everything feels just like it's its own different thing, no matter where the character shows up. Again, even if that character is showing up, like you get multiple animated films or multiple animated shows, it's a completely different fucking character, despite them having the same name. Continuity is very important for long-term, reliable customers. And that's a tip for anybody that is entering in the realm of entertainment and art. That don't take that shit for granted. It's a valuable thing if you want to maintain a particular base that is reliable, that is dependent. Maybe it's not going to be you're not going to see the most revenue in the shortest span of time, but from a long-term standpoint, that's an investment that your customers can get into, because you know they're giving them something that it's easier for them to keep up with. And this is why I think that model of basically how it works with, and it's a beautiful thing, it's an awesome thing from an entertainment standpoint, is that when it comes to anime and manga, for the most part, at least the best ones, they sell each other. The manga sells the anime sells the manga. So if someone came to this by way of finding out about the anime first, they then get interested in the manga. Someone read the manga first, they then get interested in the live action. We're not having any of that. Relationship is not a thing when it comes to American comic book culture. And I think that's because they do not simply value canon. They don't value continuity at all anymore. And maybe that's because of the Hollywoods of the world having their like greasy ass fingers on it. That could be part of it. Maybe, I don't know. I'd argue, I guess, that it is, because these guys, I guess to be in Hollywood, you kind of got to have that massive ego. And these people always want to leave their imprint. Definitely when you're dealing with producers, directors, and actresses, they want to make sure that they leave their imprint on the film or on the character. So it's less about, okay, I know who the character is, I want to do an accurate depiction of them. And it's more of, okay, this is a vanity project and I'm trying to advance my career and I just want to leave my stamp. So if I have to change fucking everything it is about the character, much like we saw with fucking Marvel in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, if they have to do that, they'll do it. But I don't think long term, I think this is why you don't see as much enthusiasm, let's say, in other avenues, though. You look at something, it doesn't even make sense that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is as high as it is in terms of it can just shit out billion-dollar entities. Yet the books are at an all-time worst in terms of comparison in the Japanese comic books, or with the Japanese comic books, in their own fucking backyard. They're getting destroyed by the Japanese in their own fucking backyard. That doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever. That makes no sense. You think if you're at the peak in terms of like one deal, like with, again, we're talking about live action movies, you should be seeing an increase in sales, and the Japanese shouldn't be even anything close. Yet it's not the case. So I think there's something to learn from an entertainment standpoint. For those of you that are looking into entering into the space like I am, do not take that shit for granted. Not everybody's going to make it out. Not everybody's going to see as much success to where they start to become more known from a household standpoint. But if you play your cards right, you could have different entities that sell the other. And I think that in order to do that, you have to make sure that you don't deviate so far from it just for the sake of adapting something in a different medium.